let there be light, and there was light. Okay, so welcome if you're joining us for the first time. I am Crimey Queen, and this is where we all about actualizing self love with the use of scriptural references and of course seeing how they have impacted on our lives. But I just want to really read this poem. Of course, it's a poem that I intended on memorizing, but I haven't done this yet, so I'm going to read it out. And of course, it's very it really sets a wonderful mark for me because it was such a wonderful experience, which is going to be of course explained in the poem. But it was after having my Kundalini activated. I am perhaps using this word on every presentation, but of course Mother Eve was very present there, and that's why I'm prompted to read this poem. So I haven't got my reading glasses, and I'm hoping that I can manage this well enough, and perhaps I'll just be creative with it overall. Okay, so it's called The Movement of the Crimson Light. Of course, this is the name of the volumes of my autobiographies, volume 1 and 2, The Crimson Light. Okay, so this all happened, which I have spoken about in some of the presentations, that yes, while I was writing, I had this prompt, you know, this calling to go to the river. I might not have said this bit yet, but that's one of the things that happened after my activation. Okay, so the crimson light had nudged me, not once, but twice, till I adhered to its call to take a walk down the river. Must be something down there, I told myself. They'd cut down the trees on both sides of the banks, and the air was crystalline. You could see the woods from the trees, I would say. I will release myself of all restrictions and go with the flow, just as this water flows. And I'll let go of the need to control. Therefore, I release this affirmation by drinking 3 gulps of water of this crystal force with its rhythmic sounds that flows down streams. The rocks were huge and many. They spoke of their solidity, that you can build any house upon them. They were of various shapes and sizes, each with their own language. A rock in the middle of the waters beckoned me closer and said, "Come, sit here." And as I did, the trickling waters over my feet whispered, "Listen, listen. Isn't this the sweetest sound you ever heard?" Well, with full attention, I had agreed that indeed it was the sweetest sound I ever heard. I just had to salute to its rhythmic beats until my soul said enough. Then a light and gentle breeze blew over my bare shoulders and whispered to me, tell me, really, isn't this the gentlest touch you ever felt?" Without specific need to observe, the sweet sensation flowing down my spine, a feeling so divine, but had to define what exactly had touched my skin, and with need to immediately prostrate to my knees, indeed, it was the gentlest touch I ever felt. And with my head humbly bent low, in honor of the warm glow, I looked into the waters flowing down streams, held by massive roots of the trees that had touched the heavens, and with branches that also reached way down, contrasted by blue spaces and with green leaves. The leaves said to me, "Look, look, isn't this the nicest dance you've ever seen?" And as I looked through, though I could not tell for sure if it were a waltz, tango, or zumba that had allured butterflies in my guts. Indeed, it was really the nicest dance I had ever seen, for it had not only mesmerized my gaze, but it harmonized all my senses, and that compelled my gaze to the skies. With reverence, I saw that it was the same dance, as above, so below. Spellbound with their display, as the raindrops dazzled onto my bare shoulders, a blessing from above, I told myself. Then I felt the heavenly rays somehow had permitted my eyes to follow each raindrop. And the waters immediately whispered something else, which drew my attention on their formation. There were circles and into circles, spreading into infinity, by which I understood something about cause and effect. I realized that the waters in the middle of this sphere had indeed mirrored everything to perfection, as though seeking my confirmation. Where am I in all of this? I asked myself. And then I really saw that I am that raindrop that had fallen onto the waters and rippled out into the roots of the trees, that had dived into the darkness of the ground, which formed the banks. Then the electrified tingles went up and down my spine. My hair stood in salutation to the great divine, because then I felt one with the movement of the crimson light. Okay, I was hoping to read some more, but however, let's just end on this one for now. Well, this was the poem that just came out, and this poem was written perhaps in half an hour, and it just flowed like the waters that were trickling over my feet. So this experience, I might have spoken about this before, because I've done so many videos, over nearly 700 videos or so. In fact, I really, so basically, this, I was writing the crimson light, and I could feel this nudging. Go to the river, and that was in St. Lucia, by the way. I was in St. Lucia, and of course, you know, when you're in flow writing or doing anything for that matter, but I felt like I was in flow writing, but I could hear audibly that, well, hearing is audible, okay, but it was very audible, go to the river, and in fact it was called go to Vitoe, because that's the name we call the river. It was really a river that I spent a lot of time when I was growing up in my childhood days. That's where we went to do the laundry. We washed around the river and dried the clothes on the rocks and the stones, or on even on the low trees and shrubs. So basically, that's what I had this message that I should leave my writing. It's not saying you should leave your writing, it just says go to Vitoe. And I got up and went back on the third time. So I got up, went back to the computer, got up, went back to the computer, and I thought, no, it's like, you need to go. It's like, you need to go to Vitoe. And so I went there. And it has been the most spectacular experience of my lifetime, I should say. When I got there, of course, there was no one around. But the air, as I said, it was crystalline. I could see formations and colors and richness and beauty that I had not captured in that place, perhaps from I was a child. Of course, when I was a child, because we bathed in the river, everything glows when you're there. It was wonderful. So, yes, that was pure beauty then. But after going back and settling on the island, because I spent 5 years on the island, um, and yes, there's another story. What got me going to the island was just really another amazing story. Well, come to think of it, I do have many amazing stories. So, there I went and I had this wonderful experience. I noticed the rocks. They were talking to me. And then the rock in the middle of the waters called me, sit on her, and then my feet, of course, in the water, I could hear the trickling sounds, and it was just mesmerizing. So I got back and I was just relating this poem. It was just coming out, and I just went straight on the computer. And I don't think I spent as much as half an hour. I might have spent half an hour because I'm not the fastest typist. But it was just so amazing. And that was without editing or much editing. I have changed couple lines since then because, of course, I implemented part of this into the Crimson Light. So if you hear me recite this poem again with a slight variation, but that's what art is about. So there's the Crimson Light. It's the movement of the Crimson Light. Now I'm using this because we are talking about Mother Eve, and I've just come from under the shower, and there I was really of course dialoguing with Mother Eve. And then I remembered the movement of the Crimson Light, and that's what really got me, of course, reading out this poem. Now, of course, there was something that got all that trail of thought going, because I was watching a video which is called The Mystery of Waters, and I did see that it was published in 2012. But of course, I have watched other videos on YouTube about the waters. Now, the waters, what intrigued me, because the presenter or researcher of waters, of the waters in that video, was talking about how he feels that he has only begun to really explore the characteristics of water, because there is so much to learn from it, so much. So they would have different tests or different people carrying out the same tests, and yet that the result of the droplet of waters that was being tested would look very different, one to each subject, or should we say subject, yes, who had taken part in that experiment. So that conveyed the impression, it gave the impression that the individual's characteristics or thought about water, because we are 100% water, women, and men are 90% water. But of course, the experimenter does not tell you that. They say we are about 70–80% water. But Mother Eve has told me that women are 100%. Perhaps what we call material or other elements are another construct of water, and men are 90% water. So that other 10% of whatever variance that men are, I don't know, I haven't asked Mother Eve exactly what it is. But there we are talking, which coincides again with what Dr. Blair has said, that there was a time when it was just women. It was a woman's world, we could say, because women were birthing female. So they did not need men to have to conceive, so they were just producing or the female. So his idea was that there was an interference, or a female had interfered with another species, and their men came about. So that was his theory, and as he said, that was his theory. He couldn't say for sure what it was, but Mother Eve has really conveyed this variance here. Now back to the experiment here, is saying that the individual, with their emotions and the quality of the water that we produce, meaning the water has its history with it, or its memory. It carries memory. Water is memory, so it carries the memory. The memories that it contains, of course, are exhibited in the patterns of the experiments. Yes. Now, of course, we have seen that with, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this correctly, but the name mojo or something, in fact, perhaps I should not attempt to say the word or the name, because it's better to have the name correct. But another experiment on waters. So the experimenter had prayed over waters and said beautiful words of love and care and all those things that give growth over the water. And when the water was frozen and it was showed, it was like a beautiful flower. Adversely, we had when the water were cursed and said ugly words were spoken over it, it looked muddy and not what we would call pretty or nice at all. So we can see from those experiments that water really holds the memory. Now, here I am talking about, this is what the water in the crimson light, the movement of the crimson light, that's what Mother Eve was wanting me to remember. The joys of growing up in Vitoe, the river, the joys of that I shared or I had experience as a child, and now to see how the movement of the crimson light has played out in my life. So it was giving me quite something, of course, to dwell on, because as I say, it was after having my Kundalini experience that activated, and that would be approximately perhaps about 6 months or so after the activation. So I was really, as I say, I was on this trail of writing and reinventing or readdressing myself, and really it was a rebirth, of course, and getting to know the new me. So I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I'm going to, of course, explore a little bit more on that, because we are talking about numerology, and I think right now Mother Eve really wants me to explore water again, because the waters in Genesis, in chapter 1 of Genesis, when we talk about waters, it's number 5. And in fact, talking about number 5, I cut today the fruit of the pomegranate, and I cut it, sliced it in half, so it was a nice, neat half pattern, and it had 5 spectrums to it, or 5. It was like the Star of David, or should I say the Star of David? It was like the 5-pointed star. So we are talking about Mother Eve, and we are talking about 23 or 32 or 41 or 14. These are numbers, or 59 or 95. We are talking about Mother Eve, and of course 59 is beginning and end, and end and beginning, which is what Mother Eve really wants us to talk about. 59 and not 95, 59. So I am going back to addressing those things Mother Eve wants us to count backward. Mother Eve is saying really by right we should be counting backward. And that's the thing the water wants to remind us. Water wants to tap this wonderful memory and deliciousness on us. So thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you have found this fun. Do like and subscribe and stay ignited. Okay, because we are planting new seeds with water. Thank you.